Great stuff. So thank you for joining us today. It is our very first webinar that we're hosting, all around peer influence and the hidden power of communities. So we're just going to let everybody join in the webinar today, and then we'll get going and introduce ourselves. How's your journey in today?
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, nice and easy. Good. Not too much traffic. So all good. Yeah.
I had the train today, this morning, so bit of time, read my book, a little bit of me time, nice cup of coffee,
Hot and lovely. Set me up for the day. I did get my Starbucks on the way over.
I had a Starbucks as well. I did.
Oh.
Oat flat white, always.
Always. Same drink. Do you ever partake in the egg bites? Because
No,
I'm obsessed with those.
I need to try.
Yeah.
I've never actually had a pumpkin spice latte, I must admit.
I don't like it. Unpopular opinion.
I like a pumpkin spice Campbell, but I don't know about
No, I think, flat white for me.
always. Absolutely. Fab. So, a big welcome to the webinar today. Thank you very much for spending your lunchtime with us. As I say, we'll be talking about peer influence and communities. We'll just kick off by introducing ourselves. I'll be asking the lovely Helena a lot of questions today, and then let's listen, let's learn. So for those who don't know, my name's Annie. I'm Customer Success Manager at Engage. I've been with the business for 10 years, and I am passionate about creating thriving communities for the audiences that matter most for yourselves. So, Helena, tell me a little bit about yourself, your role, who you work for, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Helena Morley. I'm Internal Comms Manager at TrustFord. TrustFord is the UK's largest Ford dealer group. We've got over 60 sites, 3,000 colleagues spread throughout the UK. I've been at TrustFord for around 3 years, and we're really interested in growing our community at TrustFord, and Engage has been that way to do it. Now, when I started, Engage was one of many channels that we had. So one of the first things I did in role was audit our channels and look at our colleague insight to see what was working and what wasn't working, and really simplified some of the channels we used. So it became from channel Engage as one of the channels to Engage being the channel.
Absolutely. Fab. Thank you very much. So, are there any key projects you've been focusing on lately? I think we've been playing a big part in those, haven't we?
So the main projects we're working on is around creating an engaged community where colleagues feel accepted and they belong. Now, that has been a journey over the last few years, with turning Engage from what was a broadcast channel to what is now a two-way online village community where colleagues can show up as themselves and feel seen and accepted to do so. So that is our driving principle through our internal communications and any employee engagement we do. The main projects we're focusing on at the moment, one of them is to bring some humour into our internal comms, and it's part of that journey to take us from this corporate mouthpiece to more of a two-way conversation, and we're seeing humour play a huge part in that. Launching new colleague-led network groups. The one we did this summer was Wellbeing, and that came directly from colleague insight. And then preparing for a really busy Q4 in internal comms, like it is for so many organisations. We have our annual peer-to-peer awards. We film a big strategic piece for our digital conference. And of course, always looking for ways for colleagues to get involved in TrustFord and involved on our online community on Engage. We're really transforming the culture there, and I'm really proud to work for the Blue Oval.
Amazing. You've been doing some great work on your internal comms networks, and it's great to see that increase of engagement on the platform as well. What drew you to the idea of peer-led influence in the first place?
Well, peer-to-peer influence isn't anything new. It's absolutely embedded in human psychology, maps directly to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's something businesses and marketeers have cottoned on to a long time ago. How many of us are going on TripAdvisor before we book a hotel? How many of us look for recommendations of others when we go out for a meal? A whole new job role has been created of influencers on social media. And why is that? It's because as humans, we are looking to each other for acceptance. We are looking to see other people like us in our tribe mentality. Do I feel accepted here? Are these people like me? And actually, peer-to-peer influence helps build this sense of community and this sense of belonging, on a very intrinsic human level. If I am in an environment where I can be myself, where I am accepted for myself, where I am seen for myself, and where I get the recognition of others, then actually I can thrive in who I am and be great at my job. So rather than ignoring who we are as humans and not taking on human psychology, it makes absolute business sense to tap in to what drives us as humans, and that peer-to-peer influence and that peer-to-peer acceptance is something at the very heart of human needs. So I think it's really important we look at that from an internal comms point of view. We know our customers are the humans in our organisations, and why wouldn't we want them to do their best work? Of course we would want them to do their best work. So creating an environment where they can share their voice, be accepted and supported for sharing their voice, and also find community and belonging, that's going to deliver some great outcomes in terms of engaged colleagues that want to do a good job, and of course that impacts on business outcomes that we're looking for in terms of higher profits or greater retention.
Absolutely. That's really great. And I think as well, from an engaged perspective, there are features within the platform, things that you'll likely see in your personal lives when you're using, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, Facebook. And those features and functionality make our users hopefully feel like a little bit more warm and cozy, and hopefully give them that ability to want to share because they are familiar with what we've got. I did mean to say as well, if you have any questions throughout, pop them in the Q&A box, and we have our engaged founders there ready to answer your questions throughout the webinar today. So kind of, what does community mean to you in your organisation?
Well, I think that community is, like I said, it's about creating that connection with other people, and Engage as being the vehicle for us to do that. If we think about Engage as a broadcast channel, you are being communicated to. You're being told various things, that kind of thing. There's really no room for any expression of who you are or any real connection. And with us having so many sites and so many colleagues, we are spread throughout the UK. We're not in one office where, traditionally that's where you'd have your community in your office. Well, actually, we need a virtual community to cover the whole of the UK, 3,000 colleagues. And Engage has been, absolutely critical in doing that, because from turning it from broadcast channel into a two-way conversation, and we've done that through implementing social posting. Now, what social posting has done is turn Engage into our social network. And the humans in our organisation are themselves, whether they are in work or out of work. And the way we live our lives now, we are on social media, we are on LinkedIn, we're on whatever social medias we are, and that's how we're behaving, both in work and out of work. So we don't want to put a barrier up to engagement in work by not serving our colleagues as customers and not giving them a consumer grade experience. We want them to be able to find the familiarity and the comfort, the safety, that kind of coziness we talk about in a digital point of view of recognizable ways to behave online. You don't go onto LinkedIn or Instagram and be told, you've got the ability to like, to comment, to share content, and that's what we brought into TrustFord with Engage, that ability. Now, that ability then creates your thriving community. You can't behave in a community if you're just being told what to do. That is not a community. That's something different. A community is being able to have a conversation, to be yourself, to feel accepted, to have an environment where you can thrive. And that's where social posting has taken us. But in terms of creating a thriving community. That's important to TrustFord because we want to be a great place to work.
Absolutely.
I asked my CEO a couple of weeks ago if he wanted the colleagues of TrustFord to know something. What was the one thing he'd want us to know? And that was that we were cared for. He wanted all colleagues to be cared for. Our HR director regularly promotes, happy colleagues and mean happy customers, mean a happy business. And when we've got that coming down from our leadership, it's clear we want to create a community at work where colleagues can do their best and thrive. So community is really a strategic pillar of creating a great place to work.
I love that. I think from working with many customers at Engage over the many years, I think the main thing is that ability to enable that colleague voice and having that within the platform and having that coming down from the top as well. And that, your leaders wanting that, wanting your colleagues to be happy in their workplace. It is so powerful. And I see data from many different platforms, and yours is right up there, some of the best, and adoption means engagement.
And leaders are really critical in rolling out something like social posting or creating that thriving community, because our leaders are like our first influencers. They're the role models, they're the people that our colleagues are looking up to model behaviours, whether to model our values, to model how we behave at work. So implementing social posting, it wasn't a switch on like, we're going to switch it on and everyone's going to be sharing and liking and just bringing their best selves, onto the platform. It's been a journey, and it's a journey we're still on in terms of empowering colleagues to be themselves, to be authentic, for leaders to be themselves and to be authentic in an environment maybe traditionally wasn't very welcomed to be yourself and you had to act in a certain way. But we're kind of trying to do away with all that and encourage colleagues to be their authentic selves, because that authenticity, that builds the trust and connection we need to filter throughout the whole organisation. You can't show up to be yourself if you're not in a safe environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think so. And I think, it is so powerful, that idea of peer influence. And why do you think it is so powerful? Why is it such a great driver for engagement?
I think it purely comes down to that is the way we are built, and things like social media have absolutely cottoned onto that, and using it for good, using it to create workplaces that are great places to work. It's a question of why wouldn't we want to do that? We've seen our peer-to-peer influence drive a complete change of sentiment, as well as influence changes in business objectives. So, the peer-to-peer influence by creating a safe environment, an environment where you can share things and be accepted and for yourself. That started with colleagues that were brave enough to share our leaders, and internal comms. I helped that by doing human-focused campaigns. So it was putting humans at the centre of everything we did. So, and getting colleagues that were willing to share stories, share like things they'd been through, all that kind of thing. And we needed brave colleagues at the start to do that, and also to get leadership involved in that, to be authentic and share personal stories. And then what started to happen is naturally colleagues would comment, oh, I've been through that too, or thank you for sharing. It speaks to people. They feel seen, they feel heard. And slowly over time, that peer-to-peer connection starts building. You see somebody who has posted something that you can relate to, you like and comment, there's a connection. Somebody else is inspired to post something. And this year, we've had social posting for 2 years, but this year we've really seen a change in sentiment. We've seen leaders being vulnerable in ways I've probably never seen in any other organisation. We've seen colleagues sharing things they haven't admitted to anyone before because they felt safe enough to do that. And that is a really rewarding thing to see, that because you've created this environment and this vehicle for peer-to-peer influence and connection, that colleagues are really caring for each other and supporting each other. And care is one of our guiding principles at TrustFord. So it absolutely makes sense that we serve the humans in our business, that we can create a caring environment and a caring community.
And there's an awful lot of trust, isn't there, if the message is coming from a peer.
Yeah.
And as somebody who's on the platform, I'm 100% more likely to interact with a peer's post than, unfortunately, I say this to internal comms, but unfortunately that post coming down from internal comms, because it's all about trust and authenticity, isn't it?
Well, this is why it was so imperative to bring the colleague voice to internal comms and the human story. It wasn't TrustFord broadcasting something. It was Sarah from TrustFord telling you about flexible working or how it's benefited her. Or I remember one of the first things I did in bringing colleagues to the forefront was World Hijab Day. So we got a colleague who wore a hijab to talk about it, do a video, all this kind of thing. And that was way more impactful and powerful than internal comms saying, it's this.
100%.
And that's where we've seen the peer-to-peer impact, really. It's more impactful for a colleague to say, I've used this tool and it's helped my mental health, than for it to come out as an internal comms piece. Hey, here's this tool that's going to improve your mental health. Because actually, colleagues are going to trust other colleagues probably more than they're going to trust, a top-down message. And that is just absolutely natural. How many of us look to other people for advice before we do anything? How many of us take things at face value and don't check with somebody else? We're always looking for that peer-to-peer acknowledgement. And yeah,
Absolutely.
and trust is hugely part of that, because if you don't have the trust, well, let's just say you don't have a trusting environment, you can't show up to be yourself, so you don't feel seen, so you don't connect with other people. Actually, you get your head down, keep yourself to yourself. Actually, you're not going to deliver your best work in that environment. And you can only get the trust by being authentic, because then you're going to connect with other people. And actually, people can see when you're not being authentic and you're not being trustworthy. And that will destroy connection, really, and building a thriving community. So trust and authenticity is intrinsic. We can't do it without it.
Yeah, paramount, isn't it? So how did you go about identifying the peer influences within the colleague networks? Was it something formal or kind of a little bit more intuitive?
A mix of both. I mean, this apps, we got to the place we are through formal strategic decisions. There was a reason we implemented social posting, and that was a strategic move. And we've had lots of programs to support the growth of this community. We didn't press the button and everyone started posting. It took time. It needed leadership, trust and authenticity. And then what happened was we started to see natural influences come to this, where it comes a little bit more intuitive, that we started to see colleagues posting their own experiences without being asked. And then they started getting responses. So because we have a great CMS platform, I could use the data and insights I have to see who's getting posts and likes and interactions. We actually started through the data, we started seeing who was causing these ripples and starting to become an influencer. So it kind of happened quite intuitively. As well as that, I do have a program to empower our managers and our leadership community to become influencers. And some of them are more natural at that than others. I have helped them with guides and tips and all this kind of thing to help them become more of like influencers and start thinking of themselves as influencers in the types of content they post and the kinds of things they share. So it's really been a mix of planned work and having something, like a strategic implementation in place, as well as that intuitive growth of influencers who have naturally gone ahead and posted and seen other colleagues commenting and sharing and almost building up their own little community within the community, and that's what's really led us to some of the network groups that we've set up.
Amazing. And do you think that some people, even within the network groups, who kind of want to be involved and they want to take part, but actually, do you think they need a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of support and guidance?
Because we are at work still. So I think it's giving colleagues the permission to be themselves and to engage how that they're able to use it in a way. So people do need the guidance and the structure. I've done through that and through internal comms with kind of lots of campaigns that encourage activation in a way, and encourage colleagues to do something. Again, it's not about just broadcasting things. It's providing a way for colleagues to get involved, So some people will post because they probably do it a lot on Instagram or TikTok, and it's quite natural for them to do so. Others not so much, but they still have valuable things that are going to be worth sharing for the benefit of others, and they might need some help with that. I've run a lot of competitions around posting things for various reasons, or so I've used a lot of kind of comment competitions, photo competitions, social posting competitions, quiz competitions. So lots of ways for colleagues to get involved in things, and I've seen a steady growth in engagement by encouraging, by motivating, giving them a reason to do it. Because if it's at work, they have to get some reward from it. If you're posting on social media, your reward is likes and comments, that kind of thing. But actually, at work, you needed probably a little bit more of a reward to step out of your comfort zone, I think. And actually having competitions is really not empowered that, but has really provided some motivation for colleagues to get involved. Yeah.
I do see the competitions those incentives can carrot to dangle. Why would you get involved? And
why is that? It's a little bit like it's the what's in it for me.
It is.
And in comms, that's what we're always asking. What is in it for that end customer, that end colleague? And if there's not a great reason to do it, you've got your job to do. I mean, people that sat around on it. I mean, I'm sat around on Engage all day, but not everybody is. They're actually doing their job. So they need to have a reason to get involved in certain things, and competitions really help them do that.
So kind of in terms of practicalities, are there, aside from the competitions, is there anything else that kind of helps build a bit more of a two-way collaborative culture instead of just kind of pushing out the information? Is there anything else that's helped?
Well, I think bringing humans to the forefront has been a key part, and telling stories using colleagues and using humans to tell the story as opposed to just pushing out the story.
Yeah.
I think seeing leaders behave authentically and trustworthy, really helps, and share their own vulnerability as helps.
Mm-hmm.
I think pushing people out of their comfort zone, but helping them do that. I've done a fair bit of guidance and coaching with our leadership team to kind of release some of the things that stop them, I suppose, being themselves. Stepping away from things like scripts or auto cues to kind of talking authentically. Having the capability in your online platform to have this two-way, you can't really do it without that. It's not really possible. You couldn't do it on emails. It's not the same. And so few of us are working in an office where we can see everybody face to face. So you do have to have an online platform that is a vehicle for it. And then giving people a reason to engage, and a reason to want to be part of the community and want to thrive at work and belong to an organisation. Giving them a reason to do that, and that reason is that you can be yourself and you are cared for and supported to be the best you can be.
It's really lovely. And since activating the peer-led model, what sort of change or outcomes have you seen?
We've seen a positive change across all sorts of engagement metrics in the organisation. The amount of users we've had on Engage is ongoing, and year on year is increasing really, and social posting as well. When we look at a comparison of kind of H1 of 2025 compared to 2020, the whole of 2024, we're seeing the similar, if not better, just in 6 months than we did in a whole year. We're seeing peer-to-peer nominations. They've doubled in the last few years. Such a strong evidence of a culture that is engaged, that they're recognising.
People are living those values.
People are living the values. We saw our members of our board do our YMCA for our Pride campaign, and this is one of these things that happened so out of the blue. So our Pride network group thought it was a great idea to do a company-wide YMCA. So I had these great ideas that we'd have videos of colleagues in all different locations doing the YMCA. Wonderful. And then our CEO and our HR director and a couple of other members of our board and leadership team put high-vis jackets on and did the YMCA. Now this video, it basically went the equivalent of going viral at TrustFord. We had about a third of the company liking and commenting on this video. It was like the highest piece of network group content we'd ever done. So just like pieces of things that have stood out like that. Colleagues really going above and beyond to showcase, I suppose, being themselves. We've had our CFO talk very vulnerable about his mental health and the steps he's taken. We've seen colleagues talk about their mental health and how they and how they care for it. And what that's done is encourage other people to open up and share in ways they wouldn't have done to before. But what they've also done is used the tools that we've invested in that maybe weren't getting a great return on investment before, that are now being used because colleagues have promoted them and are using them themselves.
It's really powerful, isn't it? It's clear that the YMCA and, the exec taking part in the Pride campaign has been like the aha moment that you've had so far. But it's obvious that this isn't just a one-off campaign. It's a real cultural shift. How are you thinking about maintaining momentum over time?
Yeah. Well, these big campaigns are great for sparking kind of involvement and interest and activation. But, the real power in creating a thriving community is the ongoing action you take. We have to think about our workplaces and our colleagues as our customers. And I guess the principles are no different whether you're internal or an external marketer. It's about keeping that momentum going, staying relevant, and having that kind of always on approach. So while we might not have kind of big campaigns like the YMCA to get involved with all the time, and nor would you want it all the time, it would be pretty exhausting for everybody. It's about having that ongoing involvement. So what small ways can colleagues get involved, whether that is, sharing something or asking them a question or having a reason to get involved. It's about continuing to support our manager population to keep showing up, to keep posting authentic personal stories, to build trust and connections in their teams. It's about looking at insight to see what's important to colleagues and celebrating the small wins in these moments, but always bringing that human story to the forefront. There's always a story to be told, and colleagues have always got great news to share, and because they're able to post that themselves, that's something we can celebrate in a small way consistently in between these big campaign moments.
Yeah. And in terms of kind of like, have there been anything specific that you've found helpful to help sustain the sense of community when there hasn't been that big initiative running? Is it any tips and advice there?
I think it's empowering your managers and leaders to kind of promote the messages they're promoting, to post the personal things, to show up as a leader on Engage. they're going to help keep that momentum going. But I do think in your internal comms planning, keeping the competitions going, always putting at the forefront, the colleague mindset, thinking, what's in it for colleagues, and putting yourself in the place of a colleague, thinking what's in it for me, giving people a reason to get involved. I mean, the network groups are hugely important as that's in terms of carrying on the momentum or even starting momentum, partnering with colleague groups, and whether that's official ones or unofficial ones, is a really key way of continuing momentum when you haven't got the big kind of flashy campaigns going on. But celebrating small things and encouraging colleagues to share for small rewards is a great way of keeping things going. And also bringing a bit of humour and fun into your commerce campaigns will really help. I did something for Tell a Joke Day over the summer, and we just got a huge amount of engagement on it. It was a small piece, but created such involvement from colleagues. It was like the win of the summer was this Tell a Joke Day, and it was just colleagues sharing jokes. But what a wonderful way to create some positivity on our digital community and of creating some fun and laughter across the organisation. So, small wins are as equally important as the big strategic campaigns that you land.
Absolutely. I think from an engaged platform perspective, to help kind of like build that momentum, as you can work with us on creating some automation rules and things like that. So if we do have, for example, a new starter into the business and they're not aware as yet of all of those lovely things that you're doing around wellbeing or the network groups that are available, we can lean on the platform a little bit to ping out those push notifications and give them a nudge.
And that colleague journey and experience is going to be really key to building our momentum, and that's something that's going to be really interesting to explore with Engage, of how Engage can support that colleague journey throughout the colleague life cycle.
Absolutely. So for somebody who wants to, are there a few things that they could do this week to help start identifying and activating peer influencers?
Well, I think if you have a platform that supports analytics, you can really dive into the data, and as communicators and creators, we don't need to be afraid of looking at data and analytics. That can be really powerful. What that can do is you can see who's being influential out there and see how people are responding to them. So you can start seeing who your influencers are, whether you've tried to create them or not. Excuse me. If you don't, it's about getting out and about and listening to people and seeing who is influential in your organisation, because whether they think they're an influencer or not, we're surrounded by influencers and we are influencers ourselves. So I think it's really about interrogating your data or looking at your organisation and seeing who's behaving in an influential way, and then seeing how you can support them.
Absolutely. And it is, it's a journey, isn't it? For people to begin to feel comfortable to be that authentic self with it.
Absolutely. There's a whole lot of work goes into creating an environment where people feel safe to be themselves and safe to share authentic content and be that influencer. And if they get that connection from other colleagues, that's only going to help them stay more influential.
Absolutely. And would that be your advice for those maybe watching or who actually would like to build a community but it isn't quite landing right? Would that be your advice, kind of like focus on the human side?
Absolutely. It has to be about going to the people in your business and listening to them. If you get any kind of barriers, really just go and ask about them, ask what's happening. You'll find out pretty quickly what's stopping things landing, or what's stopping a community being built. And once you find out, you can take steps to improve that. But it's absolutely about going to the people in your organisation and listening to what they have to say.
Amazing. And one final question. So how can organisations start shifting from pushing content to building those real connected conversations?
I think it takes a step change, and it has to come down from your leaders that are wanting to create a certain type of culture. You've then got to have the capability to, to roll out something like a two-way conversation. Two-way conversation doesn't generally happen on email in the same way as it does on a social network. So you have to have that capability. It has to align to your business objective. You really want to create a great place to work. If you don't want to create a great place to work, then creating a two-way community is probably not what you're going to want to do. But if you do want to create a great place to work, and who doesn't?
Yes.
Then you do have to shift away from broadcast to a two-way conversation. Broadcast will only get you so far. So you have to take the brave step to creating a thriving community and give people a way to do that. But you have to align that to the people in your business as well as your business objectives.
Amazing. Any final thoughts or takeaways, or you?
No, but I think in terms of delivering ultimately our business objective, we want to create environments where people can deliver their best.
Mm-hmm.
People can deliver their best in communities where they feel seen, accepted, and belong. So it's really our job to create that environment where colleagues can be their best at work.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for today, and hope everybody enjoyed watching. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.